2022 was a turbulent year for WWE, what with Vince McMahon stepping down and retiring amid scandal in the summer and all that. You know, just small things, obviously. Both before and after Vince's resignation, WWE had to present their biggest of the big shows in the form of pay-per-views, or premium live events as the branding now dictates, 13 of them in total. Some of them went off without a hitch, while others were affected by injuries, illness, suspensions, and all kinds of issues in front of the camera and behind the scenes. WWE introduced spanking new event concepts, resurrected old gimmick matches from the past, and brought back some of their biggest stars ever in what was a truly remarkable 12 months. So, which shows were must watch, which ones should you not bother with, and which ones were just sort of there? I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is every WWE pay-per-view, or premium live event if you prefer, of 2022, ranked from worst to best. Join us! Number 13, Elimination Chamber. WWE's post-pandemic return to Saudi Arabia with October 2021's Crown Jewel delivered top to bottom one of the best shows of the year. Regrettably, their follow-up 5 months later was a total 180 and resulted in 2022's biggest clunker. First though, the good. For a start, they kept it under 3 hours, which is always appreciated. Plus, it didn't take place at stupid o'clock in the morning for us Brits, meaning that I could watch it live and not ruin my sleeping pattern. Thank you. As far as the stuff that happened in the ring, the best thing of the night was Becky Lynch's successful defense of the Raw Women's title against comeback queen Lita. The WWE Hall of Famer was wrestling her first proper singles match since 2006 and looked good in losing a competitive contest to the man. And Drew McIntyre's win over Madcap Moss was solid enough, though it was kinda hard to enjoy everything after seeing Happy Corbin's mate take a header on a reverse Alabama slam. As far as the underwhelming, the Women's Elimination Chamber match was rushed and didn't really feel like it needed the stipulation since it rarely came into play. The tag pitting Ronda Rousey and Naomi against Charlotte Flair and Sonya Deville was by the numbers and didn't exactly whet the appetite for the inevitable Rousey-Flair WrestleMania showdown. The SmackDown tag title match between the Usos and the Viking Raiders didn't end up happening due to Jimmy and Jay's pre-match attack, so that's good news for fans of false advertising. And now on to the bad. Roman Reigns seemingly put Goldberg out to pasture in their lame Universal title opener. Big Bill had put on a stormer with Lashley during his last visit to the Kingdom, but this outing made it clear that the tank was just about empty. And Brock Lesnar won the WWE title back in the Men's Elimination Chamber main event by obliterating everyone in just a couple of minutes. Yes, that F5 on Theory from the top of the pod was spectacular, but the booking of the match was utterly predictable and made the events of the previous month's Royal Rumble seem inconsequential. Speaking of which, number 12, Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is typically the first pay-per-view of the year and one of, if not the, most anticipated. And now, with 2 Rumble matches on offer, there is, in theory, twice the potential for surprises and twice the chance of a great match. Regrettably, both of the 2022 Rumbles failed to deliver on that potential, with the men's version no doubt set to be regarded as one of the worst in the genre's history in years to come. Brock Lesnar won the thing, surprisingly entering at number 30 and doing the very Brock Lesnar thing of laying waste to everyone in his path en route to a relatively easy victory. The Beast Incarnate had dropped the WWE title to Bobby Lashley earlier in the night with help from Roman Reigns in a first-time dream match that was decent, but suggested that the two were capable of much more. The idea of Lesnar losing his belt only to return later on and book his place in the WrestleMania main event was a novel one, but the Rumble itself was really just a boring parade of no-hopers killing time before the rushed finish. The Women's Rumble was slightly better as far as quality and star power go, though also nothing to crow about. And once news leaked that Ronda Rousey was set to make her WWE return in the match, the winner was in little doubt. Half the field was either cameos, part-timers, or authority figures too, exposing the lack of depth in the division across the board. Not that it's not nice to see the Bellas, Mickie James, Molly Holly, Melina and co, obviously. There was some decent stuff on the show, mind. Reigns and Seth Rollins looked like they were on the verge of having a great Universal title match in the opener, but never quite got there before the lame DQ finish. Becky Lynch notched another successful defense of her Raw Women's title, pinning Doudrop after a canny contest. And the Miz and Maurice vs Edge and Beth Phoenix match was far from a classic, but good enough for what it was. Number 11, Money in the Bank. Money in the Bank 2022 was, well, it just was, wasn't it? The final pay-per-view to take place before Vince McMahon's retirement, it featured some noteworthy moments, but on the whole, didn't linger long in the memory afterwards. In the opener, Liv Morgan won the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match to earn a shot at the Women's Championship of her choosing. She chose to cash in later in the evening on Ronda Rousey after Rowdy Ronda had put away Natalya in a routine defense. A nice moment for the popular Liv, but the cash in later in the show trope is due a retirement. The men's ladder match and briefcase was won by McMahon favorite Don't Call Me Austin Theory, who had dropped the United States title to Bobby Lashley earlier in the show in a decent match with a hot crowd. As usual, the people taking the bumps and bruises, Rollins, Sheamus, Zayn, Moss, McIntyre, and to a lesser extent Omos, put the work in and made it an enjoyable watch before the last-minute addition retrieved the case. History quickly showed us that him winning it was a giant waste of time and energy. As for the rest, Bianca Belair retained her Raw Women's title against Carmella in a basic match, and the Usos predictably retained their doubles gold against the Street Profits in the best bout of the night. Number 10, WrestleMania 38, Night 2. The decision to permanently make WrestleMania a two-night celebration of sports entertainment was a welcome one. It's a lot better having the action spread out over a pair of shows rather than cramming it all into one energy-sapping 7-hour extravaganza, though it is fair to say that the quality of the shows has varied wildly depending on whether it takes place on a Saturday or Sunday. Night 2 of WrestleMania 38 was decidedly poorer than Night 1, though there were definite highlights. Chief among them was Sami Zayn's, zany anything goes match with Jackass star Johnny Knoxville. The pinnacle of a wonderful piece of cross-promotion, it was exactly what it should have been, featuring a standout performance from one of 2022's MVPs and a celebrity who looked more than up for it and played his part perfectly. The Triple Threat Raw Tag Team title opener was a doozy and got the show off to a bright start, though Omos and Bobby Lashley failed to keep that momentum going. The women's tag title four-way was standard stuff and a way to get 8 hard-working females on the card, but it was forgotten about as soon as it was over. Edge and AJ Styles met in a dream match that didn't quite hit epic, despite its 25-minute runtime. There was good stuff in there, yes, but as a fan, you perhaps hoped for a bit more. The Brawling Brutes and the New Day had to wait an extra day after being bumped off the Saturday show just to be allocated a paltry minute and 43 seconds. I mean, there's not much they could do with that, is there? Meanwhile, Pat McAfee and Austin Theory got close to 10 minutes to play with and used them well. It was a great showing for the announcer, who was rewarded with an immediate match against Mr. McMahon, who inexplicably beat him after a frankly pathetic display. Vinnie Mac made up for it with his stunner cell in the post-match, mind you. And to cap off the festivities, Roman Reigns unified the Universal and WWE titles by finally beating Brock Lesnar in a WrestleMania main event. It was the third time the Tribal Chief and the Beast Incarnate had headlined the Showcase of the Immortals, and it was fine, but I hope, sincerely hope, it's the last time we see this combination on the grandest stage. Number 9, Day 1. A new addition to WWE's pay-per-view calendar, Day 1 took place on, well, Day 1 of 2022. And what a day to receive news that your Universal Champion has tested positive for COVID, cancelling his main event match with Brock Lesnar. Attempting to make the best out of a bad situation, WWE shifted the next big thing into the WWE title match instead, turning it into a 5-way. And it was a fun and explosive contest for the 8 minutes it lasted before Brock F5'd his way to another prize. It could have done with another 5 minutes, to be honest, especially given how much time some of the mid-card matches got, but it was a satisfactory main event, even if it was sad to see Big E drop the strap and end his main event push for the time being. The show got off to a great start, with a pulsating SmackDown Tag Team title match between the Usos and the New Day. The two teams, of course, knew each other very well by this point, as they've collided on many occasions, but good is good, and this was certainly only that. Not as good was Drew's win over Madcap Moss, though at least nobody came close to breaking their neck this time. RK Bro's Raw Tag title defense against the Street Profits was fun, as was Becky Lynch's Raw Women's title defense over Liv Morgan. Oh, and Edge got all broody for his victory over The Miz in a good, albeit overly long, scrap. Number 8, Extreme Rules. Thank you, Paul Daddy H. Levesque, for putting the extreme back into Extreme Rules. For a minute there, the show was on the verge of becoming known simply as Rules, not that it ever actually ruled, if you catch my drift. Extreme Rules 2022 wasn't an all-timer of a show, but at least it did its best to live up to its moniker, with every match having some sort of gimmick or stipulation attached. Things got going with a good old-fashioned Donnybrook as the surly trios of the Brawling Brutes and Imperium met in a nice showcase for the Six Sluggers. Unfortunately, the Extreme Rules SmackDown Women's title match between Liv Morgan and Ronda Rousey was rough in the wrong kind of way and had an awkward finish. Another iffy finish hampered what had been a perfectly serviceable strap match between Drew McIntyre and Karrion Kross. The Raw Women's title ladder match between Bianca Belair and Bayley was a belter, as was Edge's I Quit match loss to Judgment Day leader Finn Balor. I mean, a belter, yes, but does the Rated R superstar have it in his contract that his big singles matches must go a minimum of 20 minutes? And Matt Riddle finally got one over on that dastardly Seth Rollins in a rare fight pit match. I don't really know who Daniel Cormier, who acted as the referee, is because I'm not a fan of that fake UFC stuff, but he seemed happy to be there, and I'm happy for him. In the end, Extreme Rules will not be remembered for the matches, no matter how good some of them may have been. No, for most fans, this was the night that Bray Wyatt returned to the company after being released 18 months prior. It was a scintillating moment, and for a minute there, Bray had the whole world in his hands once more. Number 7, Crown Jewel. Credit to the new WWE regime for ensuring that WWE's autumn return to Saudi Arabia was a massive improvement over Elimination Chamber. Brock Lesnar was out of the title picture, but back to battling with Bobby Lashley in the show's opener. It was short yet intense, and once again left you wanting to see these two go at it again, which seems probable given that they're now tied at one match apiece. Damage Control regained the women's tag titles from Alexa Bliss and Asuka in a fine contest, after which Drew McIntyre put his feud with Karrion Kross to bed by beating him in a gripping cage match. The Judgment Day 6-man tag win against the OC was a bunch of fun and gave everyone a chance to shine. Meanwhile, Braun Strowman and Omos battled in a true clash of the giants, and you know what? It wasn't half bad, even if the monster among men couldn't simply accept that fact and move forward gracefully without getting into an internet war. The Usos beat the Brawling Brutes to retain their tag belts. It was good, as you would expect from these four. Bianca Belair and Bayley had a compelling last woman standing match, and really any match with a goofy golf cart spot is going to get an automatic recommendation from me. And finally, Logan Paul showed all of those performance center geeks how this WWE star thing really goes by more than holding his own in a WWE Undisputed Universal title match main event with Roman Reigns. The big dog carried things, sure, but Logan allowed himself to be carried and hit everything he had to do perfectly before falling victim to the spear. On this evidence, it genuinely wouldn't surprise me if Logan actually won the big one in the future. Don't say I didn't warn you. Number 6, WrestleMania Backlash. Putting aside my feelings over how ridiculous it is to add the word WrestleMania in front of Backlash, this was a very entertaining show. There are certainly worse ways to start a premium live event than with 20 minutes of Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins. Once again, these two delivered the goods in a match jam-packed full of near falls. Really, it wouldn't have bothered me if they had taken a few minutes away from the Omos-Lashley match afterwards and given them to the American Nightmare and the Architect. Nothing against Lashers or the Nigerian Giants, but their matches never quite clicked. Edge and AJ Styles certainly did click in another match that was easy to sit through but never really threatened greatness. Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey's I Quit SmackDown Women's title match was a nice throwback to the Attitude Era brawls of the past and a nice change of pace for the two rivals. Madcap Moss versus Happy Corbin is a match that happened, and in the main event, the Bloodline continued to reinforce their WWE dominance by by going over the triumvirate of Drew McIntyre and RK Bro after 20-odd minutes of stonking action. As far as interest and impact go, WrestleMania Backlash was poorly built and soon ignored, but it's an easily digestible wrestling show with a couple of sleeper matches that make it worth watching. Number 5, Survivor Series War Games. Finally, Triple H realized a long-held dream and brought War Games to the main WWE roster. A lifelong mark of all things classic NWA, the game flexed his creative muscle by revamping Survivor Series, making it about the double cage match rather than brand supremacy. I know we were all absolutely gutted about not knowing which color was the most supreme, but the WWE roster made up for it with a great show that only had one real clunker. The Women's War Games match kicked things off as Team Bayley took on Team Belair in what turned into a grueling 40-minute endurance test with plenty of jaw-dropping moments. AJ Styles and Finn Balor had their work cut out for them following that with just their second singles match ever. But if you want to tell somebody, well, two people I guess here, to keep the pace, the Irish Prince and the Phenomenal One are the people to turn to. The hard-hitting Battle of the Bullet Club boys peaked at just the right time before Styles wrapped things up. Sadly, Ronda Rousey and Shotzi threatened to derail the show by completely pooping the bed in their SmackDown Women's title mismatch. They simply had zero chemistry and, to make things worse, badly botched a couple of key moves. Things picked up with the next match as the luckless Theory finally caught a break when he beat Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley in a rip-roaring triple threat match for the United States title. And the Bloodline, bang in the middle of one of the most captivating storylines of the year, managed to outlast the team of Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens and the Brawling Brutes in an action-packed War Games match. Number 4, SummerSlam. Look, I will be the first one to admit that I let out a little whinge when it was announced that Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns would be headlining SummerSlam 2022. The match had been done to death and was stale as a stadium show attraction, with the last man standing stipulation doing little to change minds. And then, Brock Lesnar showed up driving a tractor, and everything changed. Like the aforementioned Bayley-Belair golf cart match, any outing that involves spots with a tractor is a de facto thumbs-up affair, but the Lesnar-Reigns last man standing match was genuinely incredible and one of the best things WWE did all year. Just a pure spectacle and an example of two titans at their best. In regard to the rest of the first premium live event under the new Vince McMahon-less regime, there was only really one outright bad thing on it. Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair got to have a proper SummerSlam meeting 1 year after the man returned and quickly dethroned the Raw Women's Champion. The post-match emergence of Bayley, Dakota Kai and Io Sky, soon to be dubbed Damage Control, was an interesting hook and instantly freshened up the women's scene. Logan Paul continued to demonstrate that he's pretty bloody good at this whole pro wrestling thing by having an absolute corker with The Miz. They seriously over-delivered here. Bobby Lashley retaining his US title over Theory was short and to the point. The Mysterios versus the Judgment Day was perfectly acceptable wrestling that set up Edge's fiery return nicely. Pat McAfee's win over Baron Corbin was far from crisp and clean, but it was fine for what it was. McAfee, like Logan Paul, is another non-wrestler who definitely has a grasp for this stuff. The Usos retained, their tag team titles against the Street Profits in a match that was maybe a shade inferior to their previous efforts, but still pretty good. As for that one bad thing I mentioned earlier, Liv Morgan retained her SmackDown Women's title against Ronda Rousey in a match that started well but had a total stinker of a finish which made Liv, the babyface, look like a total chancer and quite frankly a schmuck. Number 3, Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell 2022 will forever be remembered as the night that Cody Rhodes put on an all-time classic match with Seth Rollins with a torn freaking pec. Wrestling the match of his life while looking like Barney the dinosaur due to the bruising, the American Nightmare toughed it out and took, while also dishing out, plenty of abuse in the show's superlative main event. Nobody who watched it will forget it anytime soon, and if you haven't watched it yet, please rectify that immediately. As for the rest of the show, well, outside of the opener, nothing really grabbed you, but nothing was a disaster either. Bianca Belair eked out a win and retained the Raw Women's title in a dynamic triple threat match with Asuka and Becky Lynch. Lashley fought against the odds, what a babyface, and beat MVP and Omos in a handicap match. It wasn't great. Also not great was Kevin Owens beating Ezekiel in a humdrum match. The joke had already worn a bit thin by this point. The 6-person intergender tag pitting Edge, Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley against AJ Styles, Finn Balor and Liv Morgan was worth watching. The no-holds-barred match between Madcap Moss and Happy Corbin was the typical unremarkable plunder-filled brawl, but also it wasn't rotten or anything like that. And hometown boy Mustafa Ali predictably failed in his pursuit to wrest the US title away from Theory. You know, when I run it back in my head like that, it doesn't seem like a brilliant show, but it was certainly bookended by 2 standout offerings, and Cody did his thing looking like a human grape, so the ranking stands. Number 2, WrestleMania 38, Night 1. The most stupendous WrestleMania in history got off to a hot start with Night 1's extravaganza. It took a little while to truly get going, but once it did, it went. Tasked with opening were the Usos, Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs, which was chugging along nicely until Boogs suffered a serious knee injury and they were forced to go home prematurely. Drew McIntyre's feud with Happy Corbin finally ended with the Scottish Warrior scoring the decisive win and then cutting the ring ropes with a big sword, because he was either mad at winning or hates the ring crew, I guess. Logan Paul and The Miz downed the Mysterios in a lively tag match that hinted at what the social media star was capable of ahead of him signing a contract months later. Bianca Belair finally got the better of Becky Lynch in one of the weekend's best matches. It wasn't perfect and there were a couple of ropey moments, but they worked through them and had the crowd with them the entire way. Cody Rhodes then returned to WWE as the special hand-picked opponent of Seth freaking Rollins. Cody's win following a scorching contest established him as a big deal right from the off. Credit must go to Rollins for doing all that he could do to facilitate that as well. Ronda Rousey failed to capture the SmackDown Women's title in a disjointed match with Charlotte Flair. Not the worst thing ever, but not their finest hour either. And finally, the KO show with special guest Steve Austin turned into Stone Cold's first match in almost 20 years as he and the prizefighter lit up Dallas with a joyous no-holds-barred match. Almost flawless in execution, Austin looked great out there considering how long he's been out of the ring, with his opponent doing everything possible to make the hometown hero and returning legend look like he could still go. Number 1, Clash at the Castle. WWE returned to the UK with a proper pay-per-view presentation for the first time in 19 years with Clash at the Castle. It was also the first UK stadium show and the first pay-per-view to be non-UK exclusive since the immortal SummerSlam 1992. With a ton of hype going on, could the show from the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, Wales live up to it? You bet your rugby, sheep and unnecessarily convoluted language they did. A 6-woman tag pitting Damage Control against Belair, Bliss and Asuka was a solid choice to open and gave Bayley a big win in one of her first matches back from injury. Gunther and Sheamus then tried to beat each other to death in a pounding Intercontinental title match. One of the stiffest WWE bouts ever, the Celtic Warrior and their ring general knocked 7 shades of you-know-what out of each other in one of the best WWE matches of the year, if not the best. It would have been nice to see Sheamus finally bag IC gold, but at least we had Drew McIntyre's big undisputed WWE title win to look forward to later, right? Liv Morgan defended the SmackDown Women's title against Shayna Baszler in a unique match which was one of the best of Liv's reign. Rey Mysterio and the ludicrously over Edge got a measure of revenge when they beat Balor and Priest in a spirited tag match. They were rewarded with Dominic turning heel on them in a genuinely great moment. I knew that boy was a Guerrero through and through. Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle's personal rivalry resulted in a very intense match that was originally earmarked for SummerSlam before, things happened. It was certainly worth the extra wait as the two worked hard to put on an excellent bout. And finally, Drew McIntyre became the pride of the entire UK by beating Roman Reigns to win the undisputed WWE Universal title, is the sentence I would like to say, but the Tribal Chief prevailed yet again thanks to an assist from Solo Sikoa in the Bloodline members' main roster debut. While the result left a bitter taste in the mouth, not at all helped by Drew and Tyson doing bad karaoke together in the post-match, the match itself was a masterclass and ended a tremendous show with a real rollercoaster ride of emotions. With a molten crowd and 6 very enjoyable matches, Clash at the Castle made a great case for WWE running a stadium show in the United Kingdom every year. Forget Money in the Bank, I'm looking forward to Tussle in the Toon at St James's Park.